Hey everyone, good afternoon. Good Saturday afternoon. If anybody is already in the live stream, if you could, please let me know if you can hear me okay. Had a few issues with connecting correctly with the audio the last couple times, so I want to make sure I'm coming through loud and clear. And I hope everybody's having a great day. So good to see you all, and hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. Hope it was a good time with family. And again, if anyone's in the live stream, if you don't mind, just tell me if you can hear me okay. And it does take a minute for your comments to show up on my side, so I'll respond as soon as I see it. But wanted to start by saying that I appreciate everybody's patience as I've sort of gone through a bit of a transition for... hey, Stephen, thanks so much for confirming. Messiah, thank you so much. Appreciate your patience as I've gone through a conversion for the way that the channel works in terms of the live streams. I've had a lot of different things I've thought through and still working through some of them, but I've come up with a lot clearer path forward. It took a while, and some of it maybe shouldn't have been arguably taken so long to think through. But there was a lot of different things I was trying, both in reality as well as in my mind, in terms of what would work. And I'm pretty much at the spot where I'm about to dive into all that that's going to look like. So I'm excited. A lot more recordings behind the scene, but also a lot more live streams that are much more interactive. I'm going to start that. I'm going to give a little bit of a background today, and today will be like not testing the waters, but just kind of kicking it off. And then going forward, I'll be doing a lot more interactive ones where people feel like they're being invited to chime in. Now there's going to be one tonight if I can do it. If I don't cancel it, hopefully nothing cancels it. Sometimes things come up, but I'm going to be doing one tonight where it's like I'm inviting people to come off of camera. Come on camera, come off mute, come on camera, and to be able to actually join the live stream. But the one like right now is more just like I'd appreciate and value your feedback in the comments. So we'll kind of keep moving through that. In terms of just, again, for those of you that are my sort of consistent supporters and followers, I really appreciate you all so much. And what I'm going to be doing is basically sort of something that's been on my mind for a while. And I've been thinking about it. I've had feedback about it. But one of the things that people have said for a while is, do you have any way to do shorter stuff? And I don't mean like the shorts where YouTube, before they used to say that it'd be a minute or less. Now they're saying they're 3 minutes or less. Not those shorts, but just something that's more like 10 to 15 to 20 minutes long. And so what I'm going to be doing is taking a lot of the monologue topics that were more... a lot of people have said they appreciated the way that I'm doing it, and it means so much to me to hear that kind of feedback. But to do it in smaller chunks, where I'll just come on camera myself privately for 15 or 20 minutes, do a recording. I'll edit it, of course, and that will give me the freedom to, if I'm not liking how it's sounding at the time of the recording, to redo it a little bit, redo it, a certain sentence or a certain part, but then edit it all up and then put it together and publish it as part of on the regular side, not the live stream side, but the regular side. So a lot of them are going to be shorter. I will occasionally kind of roll them up into a larger monologue, but for a while at least, I'm going to sort of test the waters again with monologues that are much shorter. So 10, 15, 20 minutes long. And part of the reason for that, as well as my personal situation, has changed a little bit in that my kids are with me a lot. At the moment, they're with me about 80 to 90% of the time, which is great in some ways, but it's also more difficult to find the time for everything. So I feel like I need to really prioritize finding ways to create content where I can do it much more on the fly. If I say, for example, you've got 60 minutes to work on this. You don't have 3 or 4 hours. You have 60 minutes. That's it. 1 hour is your max today. What can you do with it for this particular part of your work stream? To say, all right, well, that hour needs to count a lot. So doing things like that, and hoping that I can create more content but quicker. And I hope that keeps me more connected to the community, gives us more to talk about. And I'll occasionally also kind of keep my finger on the pulse of situations where maybe somebody says, hey, this was an interesting monologue. We'd like to talk about it in a live stream. So maybe, sort of summarize some of the points that we talked through, that I talked through in the monologue, and then bring them into a live stream. But in terms of the live streams, what I'm going to be doing is sort of a couple different things. Number one, I'm going to be doing like I mentioned, maybe tonight, if I can keep it, the times when the audience is invited to come on camera, where it's just like an open mic night, I'm going to be doing some roundtables with people, live stream, such as I'm bringing on some ex-pastors. I'll be bringing on some people for purity culture topics, some topics soon about white supremacy and white privilege, and how that has come out of the church, out of Christianity. But I'm also going to be doing some live streams that are more repetitious, where it's the same idea, but we're just going to look at it from different angles. And I would love and encourage and so appreciate your feedback on these ideas. But some of them are going to be, for example, I've already done the love notes from Christians, where I just take the nasty comments that Christians tend to leave on my YouTube channel, and before I block them, I copy and paste it into a document. So, of course, ask me anything. I haven't really done that much, but I'm going to be doing that shortly. Just ask me anything. That's not to say, please ask me how does some kind of scholarship work. I'm not trying to ever pretend to be a scholar. I'm not a scholar. And I definitely would mean more like, Tim, how do you approach this topic? How do you deal with this particular kind of concept? But I'm definitely not looking to make it sound like I'm a scholar. But just ask me anything about my personal life, about my healing from religious trauma. I'm going to be doing an interesting one on, and again, I apologize for anyone that wanted me to jump right into the topic today, but I'm going to kind of give an intro, as it were, to my regular viewers as to where we're going with this. And I'll repeat some of this eventually, but Christian quotes, I'll be looking at some of the things that we have. I'll just bring up some quotes and say, what do we think about this? And that'll be an interesting way of approaching that. We're going to look at songs that helped with our deconstruction. So if you have any kind of notebook of things to do, I'd encourage you to write down any songs, not Christian songs, but just like rock songs or secular songs that helped with your deconstruction, something that made you think twice. We're going to be dealing with a topic of the idea of how did Christianity break your heart, which is going to be very related to this monologue, the first big monologue I'm going to be doing, which is, honestly, it's not really going to have an end in sight. It's just like going to be ongoing, but it's going to be many short topics under the umbrella of how did Christianity break my heart. But I'd love to hear, in the same sense, how did Christianity break your heart? So we'll kind of piggyback off of that one. I'll be doing some live walks when I can, when it's a little warmer. I did that once before, just walking in a park. I'm going to try to get something that's a little bit less bouncy, where I'm not going up and down as you see me, or I'll just find a nice quiet spot at the park and talk through it. What I would tell my former self, and that's of course all for you all too. What would you tell your former self, your Christian self? These are all live stream topics. We'll be doing a little bit of possibly talking about things like some of the Christian family, conservative family value groups, like how did focus on the family harm you? We'll be talking about Christian songs. What Christian songs harmed you? And we'll be talking, this will be an interesting one. The existential question of the day will be a live stream topic. What was the most ridiculous thing you used to believe? That'll be a topic we'll come back to a few times. And the one I'm going to start with today is, we'll call it Mindset Matters for now. But Mindset Matters. And I wanted to give a quick introduction to this, and then kind of ask for your thoughts on we'll dive into one of the subtopics. But I've been thinking about how, this journey from Christianity, or really any deeply ingrained belief system, it's nothing short of a rebirth. It's raw, it's messy, but it's breathtakingly exhilarating. It's like taking the first deep breath that you've taken after you've been underwater. And one moment you're soaring on the wings of this newfound freedom. You're finally able to think, to question, to explore with your fearless curiosity. But the next you might feel a bit unsteady, sort of like a trapeze artist that's letting go of that safety bar for the first time. It's a dance between exhilaration and uncertainty. And as you step into this vast open world that's bursting with untapped possibilities, you're unsure of yourself at times. And for years, maybe decades, faith provided the scaffolding for your thoughts, for your choices, for your dreams, for everything. It was the map you used to navigate every single twist and turn of life. But when that map proves faulty and its pathways stumble, the loss can feel very staggering. It's like you're stepping off of the edge of a cliff into a very dizzying abyss. And that fall, that sense of free fall, it at the same time can awaken something profound. The realization that you're no longer bound by someone else's rules. And the chains that once confined our thoughts are now broken. We're free to carve a path that's uniquely ours. And this isn't a journey just of destruction, as it were, but of reconstruction. It's not reconstructing Christianity for us, it's reconstructing our lives apart from mythology, Christianity being completely irrelevant. And we're taking the pieces of our former life, both the broken bits as well as the beautiful lessons, and we're weaving them into something new and deeply meaningful to us as much as possible. And there are questions that haunt and challenge us now. Who am I? Who am I? Who was I before? And how has that changed? What parts of me can remain? What parts do I need to discard because they were never really me? They were just inherited. What do I truly value? How do I define meaning and purpose? And these questions aren't burdens. They're golden invitations. They beckon us to rediscover, to grow, to become. And within the chaos of the uncertainty lies this spark, this flicker of hope that grows brighter with every step we take. And freedom, for all of its challenges, is a gift that I think is absolutely worth embracing. And now, without these rigid walls of dogma, we have room to expand, to explore what really resonates with our souls. And we're just no longer limited by someone else's definition of worth or morality. And you are enough, just as you are, things like that. Your courage, even in the face of doubt, becomes fairly remarkable, honestly. The bravery it took to do this and to keep taking steps forward. And you realize you have the strength to navigate this journey, even though the terrain certainly feels very steep and uncharted. But this is not just about rejecting beliefs. It's about reclaiming your life, healing the wounds that have been left by fear and shame that used to whisper, as it were, lies into your heart. It's about embracing your autonomy and rediscovering your identity, finding joy in the in the small, unforced moments of every day. And as you and I rebuild, we're discovering this strength that we never thought we had. And we're seeing pieces of our brokenness that become sort of a mosaic of beauty and triumph. And of course, you don't have to face this alone. We're gathering tools, we're gathering insights, we're gathering people and friends and community who inspire us and support us. And they're not rules to replace the old ones. They're just guides to help us thrive with hopefully a bold authenticity. They're going to anchor us when the waves of doubt roll in and remind us of our progress, hopefully, or tell us that when we're stuck or uncertain that it's going to be okay. But we're looking to start to develop mindsets, tools that are going to empower us as we start to create a life that is authentically ours and is profoundly liberating. And again, that's what we're going to start to talk about. I'm going to ask some questions here shortly, but just to sort of wrap up my introduction, the road ahead for a lot of us is going to wind back and forth, but I hope that every step is going to take us closer to something that's really going to feel extraordinary. A life that is not just free of the old stuff of Christianity and mythology, but is very fulfilling. A life where we can savor our life, our own selves, savor joy, savor connection, meaning on our own terms. So, as you walk this path, as I walk my path, know that you're not just leaving something behind. We're stepping into something radiant, into something boundless. And this journey, again, this rebirth, is perhaps the most courageous, transformative thing that you will ever do. And it's a true revolution of your heart and your mind. And you don't have to do it perfectly, but you just have to begin and trust each step that you take, trust that each step matters, and trust yourself through it. But stepping into this new life isn't just about choosing freedom. You're cultivating these attitudes, again, these mindsets that will sustain you through the highs and the lows. And that's what we're going to do many times throughout. Again, we're going to take topics, and there's like an umbrella of mindset matters and the mindset that you need to cultivate. But we're going to dive into specific aspects of it. And I'm going to bring up one of them today, but in a minute. But this process of rebuilding is not a one-time act. It is an ongoing journey. Just like when we were Christians, we would say, you don't repent once, you repent every day. It's a similar kind of dynamic. This is an ongoing everyday thing. You're going to have to give yourself patience through this process. If you want to thrive in this new space of deconversion, it's essential to adopt certain mindsets that are going to empower and encourage and strengthen you and intentionally get rid of the bad ideas. And we're not talking ever about perfection. No one's going to arrive and be the ideal deconverted person. We're just talking about slowly nurturing the qualities that are going to keep us grounded and open to growth. And we're equipping ourselves with an emotional compass, as it were, a set of guiding principles to navigate these challenges and the triumphs, hopefully a lot of triumphs. But these attitudes, when we embrace them and think through them carefully and make them our own and personalize them, they kind of become like threads that are going to weave a safety net beneath us. They're going to let us stumble, they're going to help us to rise back up and help us move forward. So I do want to ask, what are some of the attitudes that are going to form the foundation of a healthy and strong mindset for you? They're the values and perspectives that will help us to reclaim our autonomy on a daily basis, to honor our humanity, to embrace life on our own terms. So I encourage you, let's begin to explore these critical aspects. And we're going to start with, a whole bunch of great thoughts. One of the ones that we're going to talk about soon, not today, is self-compassion. So please keep that on your radar. Self-compassion is a very big deal for a lot of us. That was just not part of our vocabulary. Self-compassion didn't make sense in the context of being severely, depraved. But what I want to talk about today as a starting point, before we get into what are the attitudes that we need to have, I want to ask the question, and this is where I'm going to go to the comments in a minute, but also ask you for your thoughts on this. What are the attitudes that we have to get rid of first? You know what I mean? Like you want to say, I want to make my home beautiful. But if your house is full of trash, you can't really start with making it beautiful. If you say, I want to put up some shelves here, I want to decorate this and paint that. Well, if you have mold, or you have old drywall that's cracked, you have wallpaper that needs to come down, you have all kinds of other issues, you have old ratty carpet, you're not really going to start with the question of how do I decorate? How do I make this beautiful? You're going to say to yourself, what needs to go first? And for a lot of us, maybe that's practically what you're actually dealing with. You're dealing with home situations where you are trying to get rid of bad stuff so you can start to eventually create beauty. But that beauty stage is a little bit removed. Right now, you're just more in the not survival mode, but you're trying to figure out how to have a starting point. And you know that your starting point is not what you want to get to. It's first what you need to get out of. You're getting out of something. We talk different ways about that this was something that was done to you. And we should probably talk about the fact that it's something you need to get out of. So, deconversion is not just stepping away from the church or no longer believing in Christianity. It's about untangling the deeply embedded ideas and narratives that shaped your worldview. And these ideas don't just vanish overnight. They linger, they color our thoughts, our emotions, our decisions. And when we learn to identify and dismantle those influences in really serious, profound ways, that it becomes a crucial part of reclaiming our mind and our autonomy, our identity, things like that. So my question for you to start with is, what does that look like for you? Getting Christian worldview out of ideas out of your head involves recognizing where those beliefs still have a hold over your thinking. So may I ask, if I could, for your feedback here on this live stream and a lot of these live streams that we'll be doing like this, what are some of the long held assumptions that you are starting to question? And maybe, go back if you've already kind of way your way out of deconversion, but just, what were some of the long held assumptions that you had to go through, that you had to question, where you catch yourself saying, oh my goodness, this, I'm suffering today, or I'm suffering with this, but it's got a purpose. And you're like, oh shit, that's Christianese. This suffering does not have a purpose. Or, the idea that you're inherently unworthy, or you feel like, man, I deserve this. I deserved to have bad things. And you have to catch yourself and saying, oh, that's the kind of place I want to start with. What were the moral frameworks that you've been reevaluating? Things like replacing sinfulness with concepts of empathy and human well-being. What were some of the fear-based beliefs that you've untangled? What are some of the things that you've had to release to say, I don't believe it anymore. It's not part of my worldview anymore. And why did you do it? And what values did you have to get rid of to create space to claim the correct ones for you? The new system, the new ethical system, the new thought process system, whatever it was that what did you inherit that you had to say, no, thank you? So I want to read some comments here so far, and then we'll go back to those questions in a minute and see if anyone's had some thoughts on that. So thank you all so much for confirming earlier that you could hear me. Appreciate that. Hey, Miss Big Up, great to see you. Susanna from Scotland, great to see you. So good to see you. Good to see everyone. Thank you, Susanna. Appreciate your support as well as your direct feedback. Susanna is someone that has given me some awesome ideas over the last few weeks and months to say, what about this? What about that? And her input has been invaluable to me. So, Susanna, thank you so much for being a part of my community and a friend. Hey, Charisse, great to see you. For anyone that doesn't know Charisse, Charisse and I are going to do an interview tomorrow, not a live stream, but I'll be interviewing her behind the scenes. And then we'll be able to hear her story. So, Charisse, looking forward so much to hearing from you and hearing where your journey's taking you. Hey, Nicole. The kids they were with me all morning. They're out with their mom at the moment. They're doing okay. We take it one step at a time. All is well. And the biggest thing for me right now is just I'm trying desperately to find people with hopefully some deep pockets who'll be willing to help support me in this legal battle, because it's ongoing very much and no end in sight, to be honest. Hey, Stephen, great to see you. Andy, great to see you. It has been a while. Thank you so much. And that's probably not as much you. It's been me. I've had to switch quite a bit with my schedule. I used to have my kids 50-50, and I have them about 85% of the time, which has been quite a shift. And unfortunately, the beginning of that, the last month, has included them being profoundly sick, which means they're not just with me a lot during the day. In the evening, all night long, I'm waking up to take care of them because they've all been sick. We have one with rhinovirus, we have one with the flu, and we have one with pneumonia. So it's just been, and the other has been coughing as well. So it's just been like nonstop. So all day long, I'm often with them, and all night long, I'm up trying to take care of coughs and throwing up and things like that. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey. I'm trying my best to make good use of my time, but I haven't had too many live streams, honestly, for about a week and a half, and it breaks my heart, because when I did have more time on my hands, the community it felt like this was a great place for me to be talking with you all on a regular basis. And of course, we're always all going to say, well, your kids are always going to come first. Obviously, your kids will come first to you, mine to me. But at the same time, in an ideal world, I'd love to have a way to still stay connected to everybody and still be doing as much as I can. So Allie Bree says, hey everyone, I'm watching from work, so I might be in and out. That's no worries. Allie, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you being here. Miss I, self-compassion. Yeah, we'll be definitely talking about that one for sure. Probably starting next time. We're doing a live stream on this under this umbrella. See here, Adria, great to see you. Thank you so much. Adria says, what needs to go? Self-doubt and insecurity. Yeah, that is a great point. Self-doubt and insecurity. I love that. And again, if anybody wants to give, see here, if anybody wants to, mention something and then kind of go into more detail, feel free. I will be glad to share a few thoughts on it, but feel free to follow it up with anything that you want to. Let's see here. So let me just see if Adria feel free to write more if you want to, but just talking about self-doubt and insecurity, that's a great starting point. For so many of us, I think it was just drilled into us, number one, like the Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, don't lean on your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths. That self-doubt, that insecurity, but also just the sense that your wisdom is so inherently untrustworthy. You just know that God's ways are higher than yours, and that you should have a sense of humility, to be always questioning yourself, always saying, I don't understand the Bible well enough. I don't understand myself, my own sin nature well enough. I don't understand the depths of what God had to do to save me and what he did, the glories of the gospel. I don't understand how deep my sin was or how glorious the gospel was. And the best thing for me is to humble myself and say, you don't understand. You don't get it. And you need to be willing to just listen to the word of God, listen to the Spirit, listen to stop acting like your impressions and your thoughts and your attitudes are important. They're not. And for so many of us, there are these verses that we've memorized, especially from the New Testament, that would talk about crucifying yourself, putting yourself to death. And when you realize that the self that you were putting to death was the authentic, genuine you, and you've been putting yourself to death, not in a Christian good sense, but just literally you've been putting yourself to death. And I remember that song, who was it? It's a Jewel. Why do we crucify ourselves? You've been crucifying yourself this whole time. You've been crucifying yourself this whole time. So yeah, the self-doubt and the insecurity needs to go. And I think too, just even the authority structures of saying you need to listen to your elders, listen to your parents, of course, listen to your church, and that's important. I'm not discounting that, but listen to your church elders, listen to the Christians that have gone before. Certainly, listen to the elders of the church and the of the church that's been around for 2,000 years, the early church, the church fathers in the sense of the actual people that wrote the New Testament. Just listen to them, rank yourself under them, and listen. And you're taught in 1,000 different ways with 1,000 different cuts. You need to stop thinking as if you have something good to say. You have nothing good to say. Just listen. Let God take over and just wash away you and replace you with the Spirit, and then good things will come. When you're given that for years at a time, especially as a kid, well, when you finally let go, you're like, I have never known who I am this whole time, but also, in terms of the insecurity, you just feel like I don't know where my platform is. I don't know where to stand. And a lot of us, it comes out. I've talked about this before, but it comes out in the apologetic sense, not Christian apologetics, but just being apologizing as a personality trait, where you just constantly say, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And I jokingly say, I do that. I say, "I'm sorry about that, and I'm sorry for doing it." We say it all the time, but it's true. It literally affects our personalities, and it's crazy. I did a live stream monologue about something like that maybe a month or two ago. It's the one that's got the real dark red background, but I encourage you to go watch that if you're interested. So Adria, thank you so much for that. Feel free to add more if you'd like to. And Moon Pearl says, turn the other cheek and be submissive. And again, for anyone that's just joining us, we're talking about your mindset and the importance of having focus on your mindset. And we're going to be talking about these mindsets, deconversion mindsets that are critical, just deconversion attitudes, if you will, for a while. But today we're talking specifically about what are the things we need to let go of. What are the ideas we have to get rid of that have been clinging to us, like as if it's a carcass that we need to get rid of. So Moon Pearl says, turn the other cheek and be submissive. Yeah, that is a great one. And I think the overarching sense for the first one is just forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive and forgive till the cows come home. There's no end in sight. Like, how can you say, I have been forgiven this great weight, but yet I won't forgive this little teeny thing from my neighbor? And when you have that drilled into you your whole life, everything is just turn the other cheek. Like, who are you to fight back? God could have fought back against you like crazy, sent you to hell. He could have, of all people who didn't need to turn the other cheek, God certainly did not need to turn the other cheek. And he did for you out of his grace and kindness. How can you, this little ant, this little peon, how can you not turn the other cheek for your neighbor? And of course, there's many parables about that we read, many, many sermons. And be submissive. That's a critical one. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. The idea of submission, certainly first to God, and then to our families and our churches, to our leaders. The idea that God has a structure in place, and that if you will just let it rule your life, everything will go well. They're almost like a promise, like if you just do this. There was even that verse, what is it? Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. And the idea that you're gonna have many, many, many years if you will simply submit to your parents and submit to your elders and so forth. There was even the threat, of course, in the Old Testament, if you didn't obey your parents and you got to a certain age, I'm not sure what that age would have been, but a certain age, if you didn't obey your parents, they could literally drag you in front of the elders of the town and say, my jackass son here will not obey. He will not submit. He won't do what he's told. And we're fed up. And they would literally pick up stones and stone them to death. And it was drilled into them very much, be submissive or else. And of course, the biggest submission again is to God. If you don't submit to God, then you will be facing the ultimate punishment, hell. And there was often as well, for a lot of us, the connection between submission to your parents as submission to God, and the sense that just like God sort of will gladly beat the shit out of his children spiritually, because he needs to make sure you're submissive to him. In a very similar sense, parents need to beat the shit out of their kids so that you can train your kids in advance to say, hey, I will teach you submission now in this temporary time frame so that you will be willing to submit in the much bigger time frame, meaning eternity. And that just, and of course, there's gender roles that come into submission. Women submit to men. Men are in charge. God has put them in charge, both probably at least in the home and in the church, maybe even politically in your minds. And that obviously is so intensely destructive. And it's funny though, so many Christians I knew didn't even live that, where it was almost like they would say it, yes, I submit to my husband, but you look at them and you think, no, you don't submit to your husband. And they would live these egalitarian marriages, and they weren't living complementarian marriages at all, but they would never admit to it, I'm sure, because they want to fall in this category of, technically, my mindset is, I as a Christian wife submit gladly to my husband. But obviously, probably for this crowd, I don't need to mention how endlessly destructive that is. I've been enjoying, by the way, there's a one second, where am I? There is a Facebook page that I want you all to follow, and I'm going to bring it up here one second. It is important. This is a big one. I'm going to connect it to this, but this is a Facebook page called Patriarchy Sons. It's not supporting patriarchy. It is written in part from a Christian perspective, so I apologize for some of that bullshit that you're going to see on there. But there is a group out in Idaho called Christ Church, run by a horrible man named Doug Wilson and his cronies. And his wife, Nancy Wilson, is all about supporting the patriarchy. And one of them includes, for groups like theirs, is that there is no such thing as marital rape. And I'm taking a bit of an aside here, but Nancy Wilson was quoted as saying, "A man is never trespassing in his own garden." I mean, think about the waves of abuse that sets up when not just the men say it, but the women say it. Women say it to the other women. Hey, women, let's be Proverbs 31 women. Let's be Titus 2 women. Let's stay at home, chaste, discreet, keepers at home, lovers of our husbands and children. And then they say, if you married this man, it says clearly, your body is not your own. It belongs to your husband's, and vice versa. And submit. And if he wants and needs intimacy, you can't say no. That's part of the obligation of being married. A man is never trespassing in his own garden. What a load of horseshit, and the abuse that leads to, where a woman can't say no to her husband. So many things to get out of our heads. And again, I know I'm just scratching the surface on some of these, but I'm just sharing what comes to mind. Stephen, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining. And Stephen, I saw your text. Is it correct? Let me bring that up here. Is it correct you just got a dog? Oh, tonight? You're about to get a dog. Congratulations. I know you've been through a lot, and I really hope good things for you. I know that you were grieving the loss of your previous dog, and I'm so glad that you have a new pup coming in the equation. Hope good things for that. I hope that's just a ray of sunshine in your life. So very, very cool stuff. Stephen says, the pastor is always right, and I was guilty of whatever they said I did. Yeah, that is a great point, Stephen. The pastor is always right. And what's funny is you kind of end up weirded out over the years by the fact that every pastor is right, like in their own eyes. But then another pastor is like cutting them down. Like, if your pastor says this, they're not biblical. It's like, oh, okay, so you're the biblical one. Okay, so you're the right pastor. And then the next pastor says the same thing. If that group says this, they don't know the first thing of, are they even reading the Bible? And so you're the right one. And you end up with this complex sense of like, which pastor am I supposed to follow? But when you're in a certain church, especially if it's like really tiny and cultish, they're just like, I'm the man. I clearly God has led you here to this physical town, this physical building. God has led you to this church. He wants you to submit to our church leadership, specifically to me. And man, oh man, especially in those more cultish groups, I'm thinking of Baptists, particularly, independent fundamental Baptist, which is a horrific cult. That's very much what I was exposed to for many of my years. But when the pastor is always right, and you don't speak against the Lord's anointed. You don't speak against the Lord's anointed. And the idea you were guilty of whatever they said you did. Like, I know what you're thinking. I know what your sin is. And don't be deceived. God is not mocked. What you sow, you will reap, and you cannot hide your sin. Your presumptuous sins will find you out. And they just pound the pulpit, literally or metaphorically. They pound the pulpit, and you end up going to church thinking that this is a good thing while you're a Christian, because the Lord is using this pastor to expose the sin in my heart and help me to get right. Like, you can't get right with God unless you're willing to admit it. And you're just so guilty. There's a movie I love. It's an old Disney movie called Pollyanna. Have any of you seen that one? But there's a pastor in that. I think it's a Presbyterian church, but it's a pastor in that who's like the main, maybe the only pastor in this town. And this pastor at the beginning is very much compelled by his own personality and by the richest lady in town who's telling him what to do, to pound the pulpit. Just be like, and you literally, they over exaggerate it in the movie, whereas he's screaming at his congregation on Sunday mornings. They literally have the chandeliers shaking, like the whole thing is just, the whole building shaking, because he's just enraptured with his sense of the Lord will get you and sin will get you. So get right with God today, because tomorrow's not promised. And yet the guilt factor, and that's, if you get sucked into that, there is a sense that some of us, especially with certain personalities, we crave and long for and get drawn for some kind of reset where you just feel guilty all the time. And I think for some of us, we almost felt like there was a obsessive compulsive thing about spankings, where as kids, it was like, I don't want the spanking because it hurts. But at the same time, when you get one, it's like, okay, so the slate is cleared. The slate is kind of cleared for everything, both for what the parents caught, like what I actually did, where I talked back to them, or I, hit my siblings. Like, okay, your spanking is for that particular issue, but there may have been like 10 other things that you kind of did that were shitty as a kid that day. Like, that spanking covers everything for today. And you just feel like you almost get compelled to think like that kind of clears the slate. And that's how our personalities were evolving in these contexts, these horrific Christian contexts. You're guilty. You're guilty all day long of stuff we didn't catch. You're guilty of stuff we did catch, and you're going to get it either way. And the guilt complex is so big, and we have to start to get rid of that and unpack all that. Miss Big Up says, big delay on my side for some reason. Oh, I'm sorry. I hope that has resolved. I did not catch that at the time. Let me just see if there's any other comments here saying I'm okay. It looks like I haven't seen any others, so hopefully that was short-lived. I sincerely hope it was. I'm sorry, I missed Big Up that it was delayed. Probably on my side, I'm guessing. Carol, what else have I done? I'm so sorry for the offense I've caused. I'm okay. Carol, I'm not sure what you're referring to, but yeah, we're good. I'm for non-religious reasons, I'm quick to forgive. So I don't know what we're referring to there, but feel free to reach out to me privately if there's any issues. But no, there's no issues on my side. We're good to go. Pale Flower Inca, hey Tim, so good to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Shannon, so good to see you here. Can easily see now through my mom's Christianese, i.e. righteous self-pity, undeserved moral superiority. Yeah, that's a big one. And I think maybe for the sake too of just looking internally first at ourselves in this process of just what do we have to do, not that we can do relationally, but what do we have to do in and of ourselves to say what part of that righteous self-pity and moral superiority were we coming with? How many of us looked down on so many people, so many groups for so many years, and that's that self-pity of like, I wish you could understand. I wish you could get it. I wish you could see what I see. I think there is a part of us as atheists that can honestly slip back into that in a fundamentalist but atheist fundamentalist sense. We're all kind of gaslighting each other, and gaslighting is not always inappropriate, It's usually inappropriate. It's not always inappropriate. There's times to say, well, how in the world can you not see this? I know some people have said that phrase is gaslighting, but there's part of us that I think there's a time to say that. There's a part of us, especially with the Trumpism stuff. How can the Trump voters not see what they just did to themselves? How can you not see it? But we're all going to say that to each other. When we're Christians, we're going to say, how can you not see that Christ is real? How can you not see that you have a sin issue and that you need a savior? And then we on the other side are so quick to say, how can you not see that this is stupid mythology? This is blood magic that goes back as far as ancient Egypt and beyond. And they're going to say we're so morally superior because God is the king, and we have the book that tells us what's right and wrong. And then we're just like, your book compels you to have slaves and to beat them. It compels you to destroy entire communities and to take child brides. How can you? We are clearly morally superior. And I'm not disagreeing that we are, but there's that sense that I think a lot of us end up getting stuck with it. It's very difficult, and we definitely want to look for a better morality, but we also don't want to end up being just arrogant pricks and arrogant jackasses that are just going to tell everybody, like they would say literally go to hell, and we would say figuratively go to metaphorical hell. But the way we write each other off, it's a hard balance. It's a hard balance, but when I think, first to Shannon's point too, just the oppression. See the oppression of going through that, especially if it's live now, like it's actively happening to you right now. The oppression of feeling people constantly judging you, saying, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. How can you do this to yourself? It's like as if God is the prodigal son's father begging you, please come home, please come home. You're like, it's mythology. There's no home. The only home is my own heart. I am home already. But just dealing with that is so intense. Eyes opening, heart relining again. Susanna, great to see you. Shannon, so true. The way others see us is something to be sorry for. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We're a project that they want to fix, and when they can't fix us, they just feel sorry for us. One of the most patronizing things that I heard ironically, from a friend I had from childhood. It was someone we grew up in the same neighborhood, and because of it, we're both Christian families, really close, literally proximity wise, and we grew up together as siblings, as it were, playing outside all day and being friends, and we went to different churches, but our theology aligned, and we were close, and our parents were close, and they stayed, like all of them stayed on the track in that family of being Christians. And so they slowly got wind over the years of, oh, Tim deconverted, he's no longer a Christian. And one of them, the thing that she said to me was in text, she said, I feel bad for you, and I'll just end it with this. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you find what you're looking for. Like I'm some kind of lost soul. I'm like wandering around on my motorcycle hoping for a nice quiet town to call home. Like you had a home, you had a Mayberry, you had a calm, quiet place that was so safe, and you decided to go out on the open road and just beg for something different for no real reason, just because you're an idiot, you're a fool. You couldn't leave well enough alone. Hope you find what you're looking for, Tim. And yeah, we're someone to be sorry for. If they can't fix us, then they shake their head in pity. But sad stuff. Tenacious Art Girl, thank you so much for joining us today. I noticed going through clothes for the holidays how much my fashion changed over 5 years in Calvinism. I went from looking business casual to a pilgrim on the Mayflower. Wow, that's amazing. I would be curious to see what that looked like, but I can imagine what you mean. I'm imagining that you're referring to hyper modesty with the clothing, and yeah, that's crazy. It is, and it's interesting seeing like some of the even non-religious trad wife kind of stuff going on, where there's this sense of like if you are more and more modest, that you're therefore a better person and you're more valuable, of course, to men, so forth. Valuable as a potential mate, as a mother. It's just crazy how we get that stuck in our heads, and we end up feeling so unsafe in our own bodies. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going the right way with how you meant it, but that's what comes to my mind first. Just the ultra modesty culture and how it ends up taking over. really taking over our ability to appreciate our own bodies. Shayna, great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. One change was to actually hear out other people's perspectives, knowing that I'm not a part of a group anymore that has all the answers. What a great point. Shayna, thank you so much for sharing that. To actually hear other people's perspectives. For so many of us, if we're going to say, mindset matters, your deconversion mindset matters, and how do you work nonstop on your mindset, to go to the title that I picked for today's episode? How do you work on it? One of the biggest ones is just to say, other people do matter. Other people matter, and I don't have all the answers. I mean, what a great starting point. The humility, it's funny, as Christians, we were so stuck on humble yourself in the sight of the Lord and he will lift you up. And to say, I had the great humility to admit I was a horrible sinner on the way to hell. And humility. And you're like, you don't have an iota of humility. You are the most arrogant people on the planet. You are sure that you have all the answers, and everyone else just needs to shut up and listen to you and to your church, to your denomination, to your Bible. It's crazy. We can appreciate people so much, so much. And also, maybe if I can piggyback off that in a sort of different way, also to hear the other perspectives in our own head, to say to yourself, not only do other people have more answers, then I need to stop saying I have the answers, but also, I also myself have different answers. I have other answers. There's a part of me, for example, that would have said as a Christian, lusting is always wrong. It's always bad. There's a part of me that says, yeah, but it feels quite natural and normal to lust. It feels quite natural and normal to masturbate. And of course, when you're a Christian, you're like, oh, that's just sin. That's obviously of the devil. That's obviously of your sinful nature. But when you realize as a non-Christian, that you're like, okay, so that wasn't my sin nature coming out. That was just a voice in my head saying, I can choose not to lust, but I can also choose to lust. Lust might be a real horrible thing, but it also might be completely normal and natural. And to listen to your own other perspectives that have been suppressed. See here, Susanna says, I had to learn that the Holy Spirit's leading was me being in tune with my intuition and learning to actually give yourself credit for that. Yeah, what a great point, Susanna. I love that. Again, looking at our mindsets here, learning that what you thought for so long and what you got deceived and self-deceived into thinking, that's the Spirit. Like, oh, I suddenly feel peace. Feel this peace that passes all understanding. And it's the Spirit guiding me, opening up doors, closing doors, telling me which to go left or right, to move forward or to stay and wait. And you're like, no, whether your decision blew up in your face or it went super smoothly, that was your intuition and your ability to listen to it or lack thereof, learning to give yourself credit or lack thereof. But this has always ever been you. The Spirit has never been leading you. The Spirit's not there. You've been talking to yourself. And in some ways, it's interesting too, I think, in terms of saying what mindsets do we have to change to proceed in a healthier way now that we're deconverted. One of them is to realize both that we need to listen to our own intuition, but also to realize that our intuition has been severely brainwashed. And it's a fascinating paradox, because you want to listen to yourself more than ever and say, I've had so many good things to say, and I've just put them on this bucket list. These are sinful, prideful attitudes, so don't listen to them. And now I suddenly can listen to them. But at the same time, you have to realize that your intuition has been under a severe barrage for decades, and that it's not just listening to yourself, it's re-educating yourself as to what is truly healthy. Okay, yeah, thank you, Shannon. Tori Amos. I'm sorry, what did I say, Jewel? Tori Amos, yeah, I knew that. I should have known that. Yeah, that's a great song, by the way. I remember there have been seasons of my life where I literally played that Crucify Myself song over and over and over. Why do we crucify ourselves? Not to get off track, but I encourage you all to listen to that at least once if you haven't. Let me pop that into the pop that in here real quick. That's what she said. But yeah, that is a great song, because a lot of us, honestly, a lot of you are doing that, and I'm doing that myself. We're crucifying ourselves for no reason whatsoever. So pop that right there. But yeah, like why do we crucify ourselves? So many of us do it. And it's part of the way we were taught. You're crucifying yourself to align yourself with Christ, but also that guilt factor. You're so guilty. That new credit should be given to anyone but God for absolutely anything that went right. Yeah. Yeah, we were trained so much. Anything good that happens in life is from Jesus, to quote Amy Grant. And yeah, and all the credit, all the glory goes to God, especially as Calvinists. All the glory to God. Yep, for sure. What needs to go? The constant fear of being judged 24 hours a day. Yeah, the constant fear of being judged 24 hours a day. That is a great starting point. I love this. By the way, thank you all so much for being just part of my life, my community. You all have so many ideas and so many great things to say. And I literally come away from every live stream with another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 ideas of things that I can then say, okay, well, let's put that in the vault and think about that, write some notes on that for the next few months. And when I've got enough to talk about on that, I'll bring it to the forefront. But the constant fear of being judged 24 hours a day. What a great point. I think a lot of us, that kind of went on steroids when we got to the level of sexuality and hormones and teenage years. But whether it was that or something else, this constant knowledge that God is looking in your head, and just the idea that someone can see your thoughts. Somebody can literally read your thoughts, read your mind all the time. And I think for a lot of us, that the idea of deconversion is in many ways learning to say to yourself, how do I become and feel more safe in my own head, in my own skin, my own thoughts? Like your thoughts, your thought life should be the safest place in the universe. And for so many of us, our thought lives are the most dangerous place because we feel so embarrassed, feel so ashamed, we feel so anxious, so worried, so fearful. And I'm not saying there aren't legitimate reasons to be fearful in life, but just saying that it should be a goal of ours to make our thought life, our mind, that place where we call home in our heads. I mean, the real you is, if you boil it down, is your thought life. If you stop thinking, if your brain stops working, like even if you're a vegetable, like there's not really much of you there to call you. But when your brain starts working again, and you can think and communicate those thoughts in some way, that's where it feels like there's the real you is there, the inherent you. And that part of you is a place where so many battles have occurred. So many battles have occurred, and so many battles will occur. But within that battlefield, there needs to be a safety net that you carve out for yourself, that I carve out for myself, to say, think through these things, battle, yes, worry, yes, go through the angst, but also, how do I make myself feel safe and at home? No one's looking in my head. And I think too, just learning to love your thoughts, learning to love who you are. I think for so many mental health issues, a lot of people are probably dealing with just this nonstop feeling of, I don't measure up, and I therefore hate myself. I don't measure up, I therefore hate myself. And I have to find some way to compensate. And that's just sad. It's really sad. For so many of us, we're running. We're looking for home. We're looking for safety. And other people tell us these messages that make us feel unsafe. And by the time we're adults, that's just our status quo. Just life is constantly unsafe at every angle. Carol, I had one last look at it last night. Never again. John Piper saying, God can cause illness, etc. I'm frightened of God hurting me to draw me back. John Piper saying, God can cause illness. I'm frightened of God hurting me to draw me back. Well, Carol, my first thought is, of course, just I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the ways that they have indoctrinated and brainwashed you and me together to tell me these things. I had something somewhat similar. I had severe insomnia for 25, 30 years. And I had a pastor tell me, like, this is because of a hidden sin. God would love to give you the ability to sleep well. You must have a hidden sin. And for 25 or so years, I believed him. I thought, yeah, that must be true. God must be keeping me from having a good night's sleep because I must have a hidden sin. And I moved from Philadelphia to Georgia for a very special doctor, specifically for that issue. And he helped me out. And within a month, with no medicine at all, after 30 years, I could sleep, crazily enough. And it had nothing to do with sin. It was just a left brain, right brain issue. But um, yeah, a lot of us, I think, whether it's illness or just a car accident, there's this idea of God's going to get you. That verse I quoted before, don't be deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap, from the book of James. God is going to get you. And I remember hearing a story, illustration from a pastor when I was at Bob Jones University. The pastor was talking about this little church that was right next to a farm, and the farmer that was right next door, he was a pagan, and he hated Christianity, and he would specifically ride his tractor with this loud, obnoxious noise. He would ride it as close as he could on his property next to the church property, so that while they're trying to listen to the pastor, they're hearing this this guy's tractor going, and the guy that did this kind of saying, look, God's never stopping. Every Sunday I ride my tractor next to your church and disrupt you. God's never gotten back at me. I'm fine. And the pastor said that he would say to his congregation, God doesn't settle all of his debts when we think he's going to. God doesn't settle everything. God will pay you back. God will get you back for this. And when the day comes, God will have the last laugh. He will. And you will be very, very sorry for what you've done. And in the end, everyone will be bowing their knee. You will bow your knee gladly, or you will bow your knee in terror. Which way is it going to be? And just the idea, and I remember even we would joke at Bible college. I didn't do this, but I heard other people do it, where if something bad happened, like you had a bad day, they would just literally say that was a spanking from God. God can't literally take a belt and hit your backside, but he can kind of metaphorically do it. Oh, your car had a flat tire, spanking from God. He's not happy with you. He wants to get you in some way, or at least he wants to teach you a lesson. I do want to remind you too that a lot of and we'll talk about this more soon, but a lot of Christianity is based heavily on the idea of animism. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, I recommend you get more educated on it. But I'm going to give you just a crash course here in 60 seconds. In a lot of tribal cultures, they have been for thousands of years and still are very much animistic. Animistic meaning they believe that there is a life force and a spirit in just about everything around us. And they are not trying to find a God to worship. They're not saying that one particular spirit is my God, that's my main guy. What they're trying to say is there are spirits everywhere. And your job is twofold. Number one is to figure out first which ones are good and which ones are not. Because some of them, they're your friends. Some of them, they want to hurt you. Why? I don't know. They're acting like demons, but they just want to get you. Uncle so-and-so walked into that tree during a storm the other day, and lightning hit that stick, and the stick came down and hit him in the head, almost killed him. Clearly that tree has a spirit of evil in it that wants to get you. So next time you go by that tree, the shaman has given us a little saying we can say. If you sing this song, or you say this, or you do this, then you'll be safe. And that spirit can basically not harm you or not see you. I remember when I was at New Tribes Mission, now called Ethnos 360, they talked about how a lot of the tribal people would not want to disrupt the spirits of a certain place, like this. Even if it was a good spirit, you don't mess with them. You just leave them alone. Just let sleeping dogs lie. And so they would say these tribal people would have sickles, like these big knives that they could use to harvest their wheat, but they would be afraid that if they would do it too quickly, they would waken and upset the spirit of the field. So they would do it with this little paring knife. They would clear entire fields with a little paring knife. So they do it slowly. We're constantly afraid. And we end up with these little things, these little mantras. If you say this prayer, if you do this, even stuff like, knock on wood. If I do that, then I'm safe. I've got my little thing. Salt over the shoulder. Don't ever crack a mirror. Bad luck. You get, this bad juju stuff. God's going to get you. It's all a systematic hyper version of animism. There is a spirit that wants to get you. So you need to get on the good side with the good spirits, and the bad spirits, you try to avoid them. Or if you have to deal with them, do your little magic to appease them. And of course, the biggest one of all is going to be God is going to get you. That branch is going to drop on your head. If the branch is eternal hell, God's going to get you. That's the biggest juju of all. God's going to get you so bad. If you really believe that, Carol, if you really believe that, again, number one, my heart just pours out for you. I'm grieved to hear that. If that's really what you either believe, or at least you sometimes get drawn back into. I want to remind you, this is maybe someone else would answer differently, and I hope someone else answers differently if they're supposed to, or if you have something on your mind. But the biggest thing that got me out of this awful garbage of Christianity was the mythology study, comparative mythology. When you say God can cause illness, John Piper is saying that as the Lord of the Old Testament. The Lord is Yahweh. Where did Yahweh come from? He was an ancient storm god, right? He was a god who evolved heavily. He was originally one of many children of Elyon and Asherah. And then they merged Elyon and Yahweh, and it was Yahweh and his Asherah. Then they took her out of the equation. This is mythology that has evolved. When we say God is going to get you in Christianity, we mean the Lord is going to get you. Of course, if we were, Muslims, we'd be talking about as Allah, but as Christians, former Christians, we're talking about Yahweh is going to get you. Yahweh is mythology on steroids from thousands of years ago. And so we're afraid of this. I would also say at the same time, the philosophical side of it also helped me to escape Christianity. And I would say if you have a God who you're afraid of, he's going to get me back. Do you really want to worship that God? Do you really? I mean, I've said to my kids many times, if I were to take your hand and put it into a hot cast iron pan with oil in it, and I did it just for 1 second and gave you a big blister on your finger, just 1 second, would I be a good daddy or a bad daddy? Oh, you'd be a bad daddy. What if I did it for like 10 seconds where your whole hand has blisters on it, you're screaming in pain, but I held it down? Would that be good or bad? Oh, it'd be awful, horrible. What if I did it for a minute? What if I did it for an hour? Any child exposed to religion or not, any child with the simplistic consciousness of human evolution can say, that is a bad daddy. If you're telling me that your God is going to threaten you and say, if you don't do it my way, if you don't believe, I'm going to get you, I'm going to whoop your ass so good, man, you're going to be in so much trouble. I'm going to make you burn, whether it's in this life with horrible things I do to you, or in the afterlife, or both. Would you want to worship such a God? Is he a good father, or is he a psychopath? The mythology and the psychopathic nature of Yahweh will help a lot of people. I know that I can't speak to your specific situation as to how your indoctrination has taken you and where you are with everything, but it will help a lot of people to just deal with those two tracks. So probably more than you wanted to hear from me, but I hope that helps, Carol. I'm so sorry. And my heart goes out to you. It really does. Carol also says, I keep going to the doctors every other week to get my heart checked in case it gives way. Carol, Christianity is emphatically not a safe place for you. I know I'm stating the obvious there, but it is emphatically not a safe place for you. They have messed with your mind. The Yahweh that they've given you a picture of is perhaps not the same one that every Christian would give you. Maybe some Christians would say you need a different version of God. I would say you have exactly the version that the Old Testament paints, and he is a tyrant. He's an awful character. And the gospel, the good news for you today, none of it's real. Your heart may give way, just like my heart may give way. It has nothing to do with Yahweh. It has nothing to do with whether you believe or not. It's nothing to do with religion or church or the scriptures. It has everything to do with your heart and your DNA, your inherited health, what you've been eating, what I've been eating, what I've been doing, or exercise level. It has nothing to do with Yahweh and whether you believe or not. And if I can sort of repeat some of the Christianese, if you don't mind my doing so. Shalom, peace, be still. None of that's real. Get rid of it. Get rid of the garbage. None of that's real. Your heart is not going to give way because of Yahweh or the lack thereof. Your heart is not healthier or in more jeopardy because of your faith or lack thereof. You're the same person either way. None of it's real. Carrie Ann, evil is an entity and not just people making self-serving choices with a cost to others. That's a good one. Let me read that one again. Evil is an entity and not just people making self-serving choices with a cost to others. Yeah, that is fantastic, Carrie Ann. So much of us felt like evil got anthropomorphized. We were afraid of it. And of course, it doesn't help that it gets heavily anthropomorphized in horror movies, which are not Christian. But, when you look at Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and all that, evil becomes an entity. It becomes your nightmare. That becomes Freddy Krueger. It becomes the evil place that will come and get you. It becomes the demon that's going to come alive. And when you look at that, and especially when you see things like how the Bible doesn't categorize mental health issues as mental health issues, it categorizes them as having a demon inside. That's why somebody is, the man in chains in the mountains where Jesus came, and he's foaming at the mouth. It's a demon. That's not some kind of mental health issue. That's not an issue of some kind of physical issue that needs to be addressed. That's a demon. And you get that message over and over, despite the rationality of our culture in so many ways. We still cling to these ancient superstitions, and we think evil is an entity. And we feel like, because there's some horrible things that have happened in our history. You look at the things that happened in World War II and these other things around wars, and you just think you would have to be pretty evil to do that. And it's so easy to come to those conclusions. But evil is not an actual thing. People do horrible things to each other and they hurt each other because they're indoctrinated, and racism is not fought, which is a horrible thing that's happening even in our culture. When you don't fight racism and you let dictators take over, and you let bad ideas take root, which a lot of the bad ideas of World War II in Germany were directly sourced from Lutheranism. Luther was a horrible anti-Semite, and his ideas stuck with him in that culture for so many years. But yeah, evil is not an entity, as weird as it feels to say that. Evil's not a thing to conquer. What's to conquer is the propaganda and the indoctrination that we as a society keep on propagating on each other because we're afraid. We're afraid of change. We're afraid of difference. We're afraid of not being in control. And it all just it all adds up to another source of another system of control on us. If they can tell you there's an entity of evil and you need to do everything you can to fight it, then you'll give your money. Like, hey, write that check, baby. We need to fight the devil. Oh, sure. If I can fight the devil, I'll give my money. Or nature, which is outside of control. Yeah, that is a great point. Nature is absolutely outside of our control, for the most part, and there's very, very little we can do, especially on the larger scales. And the reality is that is not God. That is not God doing stuff or not doing stuff. It's not the devil doing stuff. Even when you look at the book of Job, where you see that Job has the ability or Satan has the ability to create storms that kill all of Job's servants and livestock and family. And God is certainly seen as the one that is in control of the storm as well. But yeah, none of that's real. Getting rid of that, that's part in many ways part of getting rid of superstitious thinking. Getting rid of superstitious thinking. It's amazing to think about how superstitious we were as Christians. Pale Fire Inca says, for me, letting go of the idea of constant surveillance and that I need to be constantly watched and monitor myself to the point that I can't just be and just breathe. Yeah, that is great. We talked a little bit about that on the earlier comment, but I'll just say that I appreciate that thought so much, because when you think to yourself that you're constantly being judged, and there's a book that's being written down, like what you do, what you think, what you don't do that you should have done, what you say, every idle word will be held against you. You just feel like there's cameras everywhere looking at you, which I say as there's a camera looking at me, ironically. But you feel like there's a camera that can see all the way inside your head, and it's not just looking at you or recording you; it's judging you. It's like you have this voice in your head that's constantly saying, "Bad, bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're still bad, you're really bad. Oh wow, you're even worse than I thought." You put that idea and that voice in your head for years at a time, it doesn't just drop. It doesn't just drop when you escape. Miss I, need to let go of the idea that the stronger my faith, the greater my virtue. Yeah, that's a great one. And of course, that should be in many ways sort of at the very bare bones basics of deconversion, that faith is not a virtue, faith is very much a liability, and that critical thinking and addressing the cognitive dissonance, if it can call it a virtue, that's what it is. It is a much greater path, much better path to let go of faith. If you can't prove it with abundant evidence, then do not cling to it. Great point. Excuse me. The idea that bad things happen because a thing exists to make them happen is just as bad as the loving lies. Yeah, agreed. And honestly, just the whole idea of like things happen for a reason. Like, no, they don't. They don't happen for a reason. They never have and they never will. Things just happen. As they say, shit happens. Things just happen, but they're not happening for a reason. Bad things aren't happening for a reason. Good things aren't happening for a reason. Things are just happening. Now, I will say, just in terms of what you personally bring into your life, I'm not talking about manifesting stuff, but I certainly think that we can be a conduit for good things to happen by making good choices. Sort of like this conversation where we're saying, I want to have a healthier perspective as a deconverted person. How do I have a better mindset? Mindset does matter. My attitude does matter. But like just in terms of the general bad things in life, a car accident, that's not there because I deserve it or because God made it happen or God pulled his hedge of protection back. And God isn't, you're not doing good because God loves you. You're not being established and settled and having a peaceful year this year because God, is blessing you. It's just, blessing and cursing is not a thing. For anyone that didn't see this earlier, I'll just highlight it. Patriarchy Sons on Facebook is, again, a group highlighting Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho, and Doug Wilson, and the unbelievable damage that they're doing to the society. They are heavy Christian nationalists, by the way. Heavy Christian nationalists. I highly encourage you, for those of you that either voted for Trump, or those of you that didn't vote for Trump, but don't think it's as big a deal, that saying this is a really critical time frame and this election really was a watershed and that bad things are really going to happen. Those of you that say, no, you're overselling it. It's not going to get that bad because of Trump. I encourage you to look at groups or pages like that one, like Patriarchy Sons and others. It's a lot worse than I think most people are willing to admit. And it horrifies me that it's not obvious to a lot of people by now, because he hasn't been hiding it. He hasn't been stealthy. He's been very clear, very, very clear about his plans, and his plans are not good. So anyway, enough said about that. It makes an excuse to avoid accountability and responsibility for the self. Yeah, and that's a great point, is to say if we're going to think some good thoughts to ourselves, it should be, I am accountable for myself. I'm responsible for myself. No one else is. Not to say that things can't still happen to me that are outside of my control, but for what I can control, I should. And for what I have, lacked responsibility for, I should take the adult path here and grow up a little bit, take responsibility, and say, what do I need to do to be the best version of myself, for myself and for other people. Oh, and garden. Yeah. Noahide education, a lot of crybabies from the left since the election. I'll keep going from that one. Such character. Are you a Christian? Excuse me 1 second. Let me just get rid of that troll, if I can. Okay, I'm not sure if it's going to let me do it or not, but Noahide education says, I'm going to address this just for 1 second, and then we'll get on to the real serious comments. Get ready for atheism to be deleted from the face of the earth. Israel's going to take over the world. Noahide laws for all. No. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Atheism can't be deleted from the face of the earth, because we are, as a society, becoming more rational, and we're more aware than ever. Christianity has been exposed unbelievably as mythology, as has Judaism. Israel's not going to take over the world. I'm not even sure I'm going to call it a troll. Is more of someone who's off their rocker. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if what I'm doing is banning any further comments from that person, but apologize for that being part of this. But I'll try to address that in different ways later. But yeah, that person is not just wrong; they're off the rocker. Carol says, I had dealings with independent Baptists, horrible, controlling. Yeah, for sure. If you want to talk about mindset matters and how to work on your mindset, stay away from independent Baptists. If not a lot of other Christians, just stay as far away as you can. Absolutely. They're some of the worst people out there in terms of the control and the arrogance. Allie Bree says, that was a big one for me. Even after I considered myself a non-believer, I would still find myself start talking to God in my head and just to immediately remember he isn't real. Yeah, it's critical. And so many of us do that. So many of us still do it. I think for some of us, we equated at the beginning, we're like, okay, I've been talking to myself this whole time. So if that's all I'm doing, I can kind of keep doing it. And it may have been that you've been talking to yourself this whole time and that was what prayer was, but it helps to kind of slowly, when you're ready for it, to slowly put the idea of prayer to bed. I mean, it's like you can, say what you want. I'm not telling people how to phrase things, but, if you just want to say, I don't know, I pray for world peace. I pray for it. What does that mean? Like, well, it just means I want it. I wish for it. I vote for it. I want world peace. But if you're actually like praying, like, spirit, force, God, Yahweh, Jesus, Allah, whatever, Krishna, Buddha, something, the force from Star Wars, I'm praying to you, something out there, please bring world peace. Like, I'm sorry. Put the idea of prayer to bed. It's not real. You're not praying to anybody. Susanna loved Pollyanna out of Green Gables. Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. The Peace Zone, one church speaking against another church, but they're reading the same book. Yeah, that is fascinating. The mindset, if I could put it in the framework of our conversation today, of the mindset, the mindset of hyper-judgmentalism. Yeah, just constantly saying, I need to judge everybody else. And, we're always going to be judging in the sense of just discerning. But yeah, the hyper-judgmentalism, the way of trying to attack everyone who doesn't agree with us, it's a very big deal. It's a really big deal. So we definitely need to have the humility to say, I was wrong before. I mean, look at me. I was wrong about Christianity for 4 decades. To say I'm suddenly not going to be wrong about anything else, like that wouldn't make sense. Let's see here. Again, I'm sorry for the person, the troll. It looks like they got a lot of comments in before I started to take action here. I'm not sure if what I'm doing is blocking them or not, but just if you can, please ignore them for now. We'll wrap up here in another 5 minutes. So I'm just looking through the comments here. Yeah, the Noahide education, that's one of the bizarrest people I think I've ever seen in terms of comments. While I was talking for a while about another comment, they apparently just went on a roll, on a rampage here, and please just ignore them. Ignore them. Ariana the Heathen, first time seeing a live stream on the channel. Ariana, if you're still in the chat, thank you so much for being with us here. Great to see you. Hope you become part of the community. We'd love to have you. Appreciate you being here. Bow the knee happily or bow the knee in terror. So true, Tim. That's exactly how I felt. Yeah, it's really, really true. They loved the fear factor, and in so many ways, we need to beware of the terror that they want to still put onto us, and just the terror that we can put on ourselves. And we can re-terrorize ourselves. And the fear factor, I think Carol's a good example of that, of how we can get ourselves stuck in that. Especially, honestly, if life goes poorly. If you get in a car accident and you lose your job, you're like, see, God's getting you. God's getting you. And it's like, no, that's just part of life. There's a Muslim that went into a car accident today and they lost their job. There's a Hare Krishna that had the same thing and a Buddhist that had the same thing, all for different reasons, all for different contexts. Their gods aren't getting them and my God's not getting me. Ariana says, I deconverted from my religion just a couple of years ago. I'm assuming that's Christianity because you're in this group, but whatever religion it is, I'm so glad you escaped. And I really hope really hope you have a good journey from this point on. Hope we can be of blessing and help to you. And yes, I do use the word blessing. I think we can redeem it. Carol says, thank you, Tim. What is Cold Case Christianity? That is a book, as far as I know, from some apologists. I haven't read it. I would say it's probably pretty obvious and pretty much a given that it's a different version of the same garbage that they all spout. But you know, whenever you go to Christian apologetic stuff, you have to go with a sense of preparedness. You can't go in there thinking, I'm not sure. You know, they are masterminds at indoctrination. They spend their lives figuring out ways to twist the truth to fit their narrative and to get people to feel really bad about even questioning if they and the Bible are right and wrong. So just be careful. If you're touching those kinds of books, be careful. Fire and Believers in the house. So great to see you here. So many of us have unrealized trauma because of how our human fathers raised us, abused us, and neglected us. We couldn't see it. How much more are we impacted by a similar Heavenly Father? Yeah, that is a great point. Very, very good point. And for the sake of the context of the mindset, to say, you know, number one, why couldn't we see it? What is it about us that has been so programmed so horrifically to say that love equals abuse? Or I'm sorry, to say abuse equals love. To say if I'm abused by this person, that is in some sense the most loving thing that they could do for me. The most loving thing that God could do is to beat you until you bow your knee and say, oh, Father, I've sinned. Bless you. I love you. Thank you for saving me. That is equating abuse with love. And for a lot of people, they end up taking that into relationships, obviously, where they're like, that's what they're used to. And they can't see it. And then their spouse abuses them, and they're so used to it from God that they're just like, the red flags don't go up. And it's sick. It's sick. We do it to ourselves as a culture. We do it to ourselves individually. And yeah, to get to a point where you say, my mindset is, I will put up my spidey senses. I will look for the red flags, both in relationships as well as worldview and doctrine, dogma issues, even politics. I will look for the red flags. I will heavily look for the red flags and figure out, why did I love my captor? And also to raise that mindset of saying, I will never let someone have that much power over me. I will take my power back. I will never let someone have that much power over me again. Just not going to happen. My power is my power. My body's my body. My mind is my mind. No one else controls it. No one. Not even the most loving person. I mean, we can let some really good people in our lives, but nobody has the ultimate final keys to your inner psyche, to your inner world. You alone have the keys. You alone hold the power. You have the on and off switches. You have the keys to open which doors you want to go through. And to just put it to bed and say, I will never let someone have that much power over me again. That includes, again, the Bible, the Yahweh character, anybody else, your pastor, even a spouse. Good, very good point. Ali Bree says, the psychopath nature of God is what got me out of Christianity. The mythology of it all, which I didn't learn until years later, was just such a relief to learn and so validating. Yeah, for sure. It's funny how it works. I was the opposite. I would say I was the same in terms of the order that you just mentioned, but the psychopathic nature of Yahweh was not enough to get me out. Calvinism is a beast. Calvinism convinces you of some pretty bad things. It's a monster, and it makes you into a monster, and it lets you believe that God has the right to do anything to anyone, and he is by definition good and righteous and holy and wonderful. He is the potter, we are the clay. And yeah, if he wants to smash his clay, who are we to look up at the potter and say, why did you make me the clay this way? I wanted to be a plate and you made me into a cup. Why? The clay doesn't do that. That's how they frame this thing. It's very, very sick. To apply philosophical principles that you like is a great way to support your mental health and can replace religion in your daily lives if there's a void. Yeah. I love that, Carrie, and that's a fantastic point. I go a lot to Stoicism. Not that I could easily explain it all, but I look at different sites that espouse Stoic mentalities, and I think there's a lot of good things there. There's certainly some interesting things in other philosophies. A lot of people I've seen have gone to sort of a generic Buddhism. They're not Buddhists in the sense of any kind of worship, but they do take some value from Buddhism or Taoism, something like that. And whatever you need to do to support your mental health, it's a great place to start. Just don't let anything ever become your master again. That's my biggest thought to myself, is don't let anything master you, including a philosophy, including a God character for sure. Can someone force me to be a Christian against my will? Carol, I would say that the answer should always be, in my mind, a definite no. Obviously, if you're talking about making up a story where someone's got you at gunpoint and says, confess Jesus as Lord, or I'm going to kill you. You're not talking about that, but just saying, can they force you to actually truly believe against your will? Of course not. Of course not. If your will, if your rationality, not even your will, but your rationality says this is not real, I mean, how could they? It'd be like me trying to say to you, Carol, I'm telling you, Thor and Zeus are real. I've prayed to them. I prayed to them this morning, and I immediately felt peace. I asked for guidance. Thor, should I go out today or should I stay in? And within 5 minutes, it was a downpour of rain. He gave me a clear indication, stay inside. I was sick, and I prayed to Zeus, and within an hour, I stopped coughing. Clearly, they're there. I could tell you those kind of stupid things all day long, and you're still going to question me and say, that sounds made up. I don't think that's real. I think you're making garbage up there. I think you're connecting dots that shouldn't be connected. That doesn't make Zeus and Thor real. And if you're saying to yourself, all these stories, Jesus turns water into wine, he walks on water, he heals the blind man, he rises from the dead, he rises up into the sky. This doesn't sound real. It sounds like mythology. If you truly say to yourself, that doesn't sound right, and Yahweh's mythology on steroids. He's even more bizarre and all-encompassing. But the bizarreness of he's this wonderful God who commands genocide and stoning and child brides and genital mutilation. If you really can say to yourself, this sounds like mythology, I can clearly track it is mythology, and if it were real, it would sound like a really, really horrible God, then how could someone force you and say it's all real if everything inside of your mind is saying this isn't real and it isn't good? Now, certainly they can trick you. They can absolutely trick you. People can trick you. And I'm just seeing here a comment by Carrie that I think is worth going to. But they can trick you. And that's where if you're going to be a Christian against your will, you would have to be indoctrinated. You would have to be tricked. You would have to be told things that are just not true and have information withheld from you. Carrie Ann says, by denying outside information of that worldview, slavery of the mind of self. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And maybe a good example that we go to a lot is the Matrix. Can someone force you to be in the Matrix against your will? Well, in that movie, if you've seen it, if you're born into it, you're already into it. You're already into it. So can they force you? Well, they kind of forced you from the minute you were born. You're already in the Matrix. You now have to escape it. Now, can they put you back in? They would have to do it, obviously, by tricking you and getting you, I know it's not real. I know this is just a construct. The Matrix is just a computer program. But can they force you back in? They'd have to do an awful lot of tricking you to get you back there. But yeah, if your mind is sort of enslaved, that's a sad place to be. But that's the saddest place of all, is when your body and your mind are a slave. And you live this way gladly because you've been tricked so thoroughly. And for a lot of people, they're gladly slaves. They're willing slaves. They want this. They think it's real, but they want it to be real. And if it weren't real, they would not find a reason to live. And that's why you see some Christians saying, if this weren't real, I wouldn't want to be alive. If God and Jesus are fake, I don't want to live this life. This life makes no sense to me if that's the case. It's sick. They really do a number on you. Ali says, I think it happens to babies and children as we speak. I was born into Christianity. I believed God was real and I was a child of God before I knew my favorite toy, color, hobby. Yeah. Yeah, that's where it happens, as a child for sure. That's where it's really intense. Carrie Ann says the Bible is written based on death being a curse and not just a natural cycle. That falsehood is the basis for all ideals within the Bible, negating them from assumed accuracy. Yeah, that is a great point. And so many of these things are like, you're just getting down to the nitty gritty of what this has all been about. This has all been about fear of death. We're all just afraid to die. And I get it. I'm afraid to die. I don't want to die. I hate that. I hate that life has to end. I know some of you have said the opposite, and you want it to end at a certain point. Maybe not, 80 to 100 years, but, maybe you would have said 200 or 300 years is plenty. Some of you would have said 1,000 years is plenty. To me, a trillion years would have never been enough. I didn't want to die. And I still wanted heaven. I still wanted the afterlife. I still wanted to live forever. And I hate it. I hate it that it's not real. But just because you want it to be real and just because you're afraid, that doesn't make it real. It doesn't make it real. You have to deal with reality. Death not being natural is the foundation of sand. Yeah, that's a great point, Carrie Ann. Great point. Good is Gone. I became one of my YouTube members. Thank you so much. Good is Gone. I really appreciate that. If anybody wants to join Good is Gone and doing that, there's different ways to support me. And one of them is to become a YouTube member. There's, of course, Patreon and all the other ways. But I appreciate your membership so much and all the different ways that you all care about me and my kids, my what I do in this channel, what I do to protect my kids from physical child abuse. It means the world to me. So thank you so much. And again, if anyone has someone that they know that they can get me in touch with that can help on a larger level, please do. I'm honestly, begging and desperate for support and help on that level. The small amounts help a lot, but honestly, as well, I'm looking for someone with deeper pockets who can help me get through, because the next few weeks and months are going to be honestly a bit of a nightmare financially. And it's it's sad when protecting your kids comes down to whether or not you've got a good lawyer. So, but thank you so much for your support. Carrie Ann says you could add something to it, like feeding the birds or planting something. That way you are giving and doing. So no matter what you have achieved, something positive maybe. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ways to live our lives in positive ways, and we have some animals out back here we feed, and the kids love to see them and give them names. But whatever you can do to do something positive, and just especially for your own kids, for the future generations, just being a light. Let your light shine. Let your light so shine before men and women that they may see your good works and glorify the rationality that is within your head. Not the fake father in heaven. Alabal, Tim, I'm just now joining this conversation, but I still pray in a sense that I talk to myself, and I'm praying to the part of me who is grounded and aware. I find this to still be very helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Alabal, there's a tendency in our atheist and deconverting communities to kind of tell people never to do stuff that relates to, if that looks at all like Christianity, don't do it. I've had people sort of give me small attacks because I use the word bless. I want to bless people. Like, don't use the word blessing. That's from our old life. No, I can choose to redeem it. If you feel like you're praying in some sense and it's helpful to you, it is your journey. It is your autonomy. You do what's right for you at whatever stage you're at. If it's helpful to you till the day you die, then do it. If it makes you feel better. And just the biggest thing, of course, is always for us to pursue as much rationality as we can, and as much truth and information as we can. In the midst of that, if we're being as rational as we can and not superstitious and not indoctrinated, and we're very much aware of what we're doing, at that point, it's your journey. Do what's best for you. Absolutely. Now, I'll just say I don't pray at all like that. What I find myself doing a lot more is talking to myself in the sense of saying, there are much, much, much better thoughts on this topic. What are they? Find them. Make them. Find the better thoughts. Figure it out. This is a challenge. And for me, a lot of it is honestly the challenge of not just finding good thoughts, but finding a good way to communicate them. Like, my job is now, in many ways, as a communicator, and to say, how do you make yourself a better communicator? How do you get rid of the hiccups? How do you get rid of the issues that would distract people, and even just people thinking, oh, Tim is so clever. Like, I don't want people to think about Tim, I want people to think about ideas. Like I don't want it to be, I mean, yes, I want to have an impact. I want this channel to have an impact, but I want it to be ideas that have an impact. Ideas have consequences. And whether I come and go and people see me or don't see me, I want this channel to be a place where people think we are thinking clearer thoughts week by week by week, and we're helping each other. And not just this channel, of course, a lot of the other channels that are doing awesome work, but we're thinking better and better thoughts. And that's my challenge. Maybe, you know, call that praying to myself. It's not really a prayer. I never like pray for world peace or pray for, you know, something of any nature, really. I don't pray that way. But if it helps you, it's everybody's journey is their own. Death is natural, and the idea of eternal life really diminishes the importance of enjoying every day we can. Yeah, for sure. And at least effectively. I don't think it does intentionally, but I think it effectively does. I think in many ways, eternal life was sold to us as bringing even more importance to this life, because for everything you do now, it's going to be judged, and it's going to, as it were, be like you plant seeds here that will be entire forests in eternity. So like every day really matters here because it matters what you do for God. But in a real sense, when you realize that none of that is real, and like the Apostle Paul says, if Christ is not raised, then we are of all people to be most pitied, then yeah, Christians are of all people to be most pitied. Therefore, you have truly wasted your life. You have spent it focused on mythology instead of the one life you actually had. Yeah, death is normal. Death is natural. And the sooner we get used to it, the better. It's funny, was it M. Scott Peck in that book, The Road Less Traveled? I think the first sentence is something like, life is difficult, or life is hard. And the minute you realize it, it gets easier. Meaning, like, we're so used to thinking, I want this, I want the red carpet pulled out for me. I want to have a smooth path. And then when the bumps occur, like, oh my gosh, this is a really bumpy road. This wasn't supposed to happen. Like, no, it was, not supposed to, but like, this is just life. Life is really, really bumpy. And the minute you stop setting your expectations so high and saying, I want everything to be a smooth road. I just want to be a zillionaire. I want to have a perfect love life, perfect body, perfect sex life, perfect everything. I want everything to be just glossy and beautiful. The minute you stop having these weird ideals that we all set up for ourselves and just admit life is hard, the minute you truly are okay with that, it instantly gets easier. That was his point. And I think the minute that you admit to yourself, death is natural, it's normal. The minute you get used to it, it gets a little bit easier to live your life. But it's like, and that's honestly my struggle. I'm still not used to it. I've been out of Christianity for 5 years. I cannot get used to the idea that I'm going to die and just be gone. I hate that thought. It irritates the snot out of me, and much worse than that, it keeps me up at night. Not in the same way I used to have insomnia, but it's, when I think about it, it keeps me up at night, at least proverbially. And I wanted to live forever. I still do, and it hurts. But until that's my struggle. That's my journey. Maybe not for you all, but for me, until I get used to it, until I say to myself, life ends, and you have to be okay with it, my life will be hard. And the minute I get used to death, it will get easier. It will absolutely get easier. The idea that perfection is an achievable reality in the universe is a falsehood too. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. Perfectionism is so woven into so many people's Christian lives. It's insane. It took me 14 years to leave Christianity. I'm so glad you escaped. So glad you escaped. Ariana, yep, still here. Thank you for reading my chat. Thank you so much, Ariana. And just for your context, I mentioned this to my followers before, but we're sort of shifting gears a little bit. I was doing a lot of monologues where I was, talking, but sometimes looking at comments, sometimes not. I'm going to shift it away, where the monologues are going to be pre-recorded, and then people can always comment on those after the fact once they're posted. Sure, there's going to be some starts and stops there. We'll have to figure out the best process to do that, make it more and more polished, hopefully make it more useful and helpful and appropriate and all that. But I hope that part of it is helpful. The live streams, I do want them to be very much, 95% of them to be interactive, where I read a lot of chats. I really want it to be more interactive. And honestly, it's not just that I feel like that makes more sense. It's also because you all are such a help to me. I love hearing from you all. I really do. What he is doing is examining validity of New Testament the same way he would solve a homicide case in court. Okay, yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's the validity of the New Testament. I mean, I hope there's alarm bells going off even in your mind as you wrote that. The validity of the New Testament. Why is there a New Testament? Why didn't God give us a New Testament right up front? Why did He have to give us an old one? Um, when did the old one get written? Who wrote it? When did the new one get written? Who wrote it? Were there other books in the New Testament? Which books ended up in there? You can't examine the validity of something for which you have no um, chain of custody. We don't know who wrote them, and we don't know who had them in between when they wrote them. When whoever these anonymous people were, we don't know who wrote them, and who had it in between when they wrote them and when we got a version that's finally, hundreds of years later, an actual copy. And they say, oh, well, there was versions of them that were then 20, 30 years. Yet versions of them that we have that were 30 years after the originals that are like this small, like 2 words. They're the actual final versions of these were hundreds of years later. We have no idea the chain of custody. You can't examine the validity of something with no chain of custody. There was no way to know who wrote these things. There's none. And there's all kinds of books that floated in and out of the canon for hundreds of years. It's a lost cause. It's a lost cause. I heard of a guy who had nosebleeds from praying so hard. It seemed like abuse to me. Yeah, that would suck. Yeah, that would suck. I would say it's probably a good time to to stop praying, or at least pray very, very quietly to yourself. Like, yeah, those are a little stressed out. The book being based on the curse of sin and death is a falsehood of reality, negating any analysis of validity of content. Yeah, I agree 100%. I would think so. Super desperate to hear from God, received nothing at all, left religion. Yeah. I haven't looked into Taoism, but I do look forward to doing so. I know Dr. Carrier has talked about that. So yeah, I look forward to just at least knowing what it's all about. I'm going to wrap up here in about maybe 5 minutes or less because I have kept you all longer than I expected to, but I do appreciate y'all so much. I apologize for anyone's comment that I don't get to. Just skip around here and see if there's anything I need to get to. Again, I'm going to just have to skip for the sake of time, but I apologize for those of you that were waiting for me to read it. Hell and Satan evolved over time. Great to learn the history and origins of both. This way, the fear of hell fades away. Yeah, agreed, 100%. And let me just see. Let's include this this link. I've included this before. But Bill Zersher, great guy. I've interviewed him before. He has a video called Seeing Through Christianity. He also has a book by the same name. And my interview with him touched on some of that. But anyone that's like, I don't know what you mean when hell and Satan evolved, what does that even mean? The link that I just put in there is great. So if you can grab that before the live stream ends here in a minute, or just put in, YouTube Seeing Through Christianity, Bill Zersher, it'll pop right up. And I hope that's an immense help to you, because Bill Zersher it's like an hour and a half. It's gold. I mean, it's gold. He puts it on a silver platter. It's gold. That's what I'm trying to do with some of my projects behind the scenes. It's good stuff. You don't have to be a PhD to follow. Benny McVicker, we all have divinity within, and anyone that tells you differently is probably a negative mindset atheist. We all have divinity within. I'm not even sure how to respond to that. We all have divinity within. Like people that think they're actually a god. Yeah, I'm not even sure how to respond to that. Thank you so much, Miss Big Up. You always draw inspiration from your live streams. Thank you, and I draw inspiration from you all back. I think whatever you all get, I get back 10 times more. So thank you so much. The entire Bible is full of contradictions. Yahweh didn't seem to care to preserve His words. Yeah. Alarm bells are going off. It was a finale trying to prove it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't get anything. The more that you try to prove the Bible, I mean, if you really feel like that's where you need to go, Carol, or anyone else in the live stream, if you really need to go down a path of trying to prove Christianity, try your best to prove it, but look at both sides. Don't just listen to the Christian apologists. Listen to the people who have really done their homework, torn it apart, and try to expose where the mythology is coming from. If you're not already heavily in this YouTube channel, go to Myth Vision. and some of the other related groups that are doing great work, go to Myth Vision. Another one that's awesome, Mind Shift with Justin. Mind Shift, he's not going to talk as much about the mythology, but he does some. But he's awesome. I've had him on the channel too. He talks about some of the more psychological, philosophical issues with Christianity. But go to some of these other pages. Christy Burke does something similar. Alarm bells are going to go off whether you're looking at it from the psychological or philosophical side or the mythological side. Alarm bells will just keep on going off. You have Dragons in Genesis, great point, Carrie Ann. There's others, a lot of good people doing a lot of great work. Look at those groups and then really dive into it and say, is it possible that they made up the Jesus character? I'm not addressing mythicism and saying that. I'm not saying, is it possible that there was a guy? We'll talk about that another time. I'm just saying the stories that they made up about him, the crown of thorns, the turning water into wine, is it possible that they made those up? And if they did they make them up out of thin air? Did they copy them from anywhere? And when you really look at that question of did they either directly copy, or was there just something in the air where they're all talking about it in this way? And so all the different religions and mystery cults that were popping up then were kind of flavors of each other. Godless Granny is a good one. All these different mystery cults from that age, were they doing the same kind of thing? And when you really get exposed to it, you get to a point where you're just like, I can't deny it. I can't deny it. I mean, they were talking about, breaking bread and drinking wine or beer to celebrate the community that they had in Mithraism a long time before Christianity. And other groups, other mystery cults did it. The idea of having a community where you would break the bread together and call each other brother and sister and get baptized hundreds of years before Christianity, and many other motifs that Christianity borrowed, all coming from paganism. And it's crazy how so many of us were exposed to the idea that that paganism is opposed to Christianity. I mean, you really realize that is really a falsehood. Christianity is based on the foundation of paganism. And I don't even like the word paganism, but if you have to use it, Christianity is based on it. It's woven throughout it. It's heavily borrowed from. And you're going to look at why did they establish Christmas on December 25th? Why is Easter when it is? You're looking at all kinds of aspects of ancient mystery cults, as well as astrotheology, as well as just the celebration of the seasons that all kinds of groups did. They took paganism and they took ancient mystery cults, and they just kind of, I'll take a piece of this and a half of that, and 3/4 of this, and double dose of that, and mix it together, put a new label on it, bam, new religion. That's all it is. You might as well have been stuck in Mithraism or worship Dionysius as much as Christianity. It's all flavor of the month in terms of the big picture of history. Anyway, I've kept you all too long, but thank you all so much. Again, I appreciate you to the moon and back. You've been so good to me and so patient. Thank you so much for your patience with the live streams. I will be, I believe, fingers crossed, be doing more, hopefully a lot more soon. My kids are all better, hopefully better. I'm not going to knock on wood. I don't do that stuff, but I'm hoping the kids are better. I'm hoping that when possible, I will be able to be, when they're here with me, I'll be able to, still be doing a lot of work, getting ready for live streams and doing a lot of work for the interviews as well as for my monologues. And then hoping that when they're, at school and so forth and not with me, that I'll be able to just, work on blast and get a lot of great content out to you. But thank you all for being a part of this. Thank you for your patience with me. You all are the best. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. If I can, I'm going to try to do another live stream tonight. So keep an eye. I'm sorry if I don't show up with if it's, look at the date. If you're like, oh, I think it's later tonight, and then you look at the date when you're expecting it, and it's like, oh, it's shifted by a week. I may have to shift it depending on what comes up here in the next few hours with the kids. But please keep an eye out for the live streams. I'm going to be doing live streams soon where they're going to be focused on, again, on getting you all on camera so that you pop into the live stream and actually share what's on your heart. So look forward to that. And even if it's not tonight or whenever it is, if you could start to think about it, especially those of you that are regulars, think about what's on your heart that you're learning, and just say to yourself, like I said, YouTube has shorts now that are 3 minutes or less. Kind of frame it like that. Say to yourself, give yourself the length of maybe 3 to 7 minutes, and say, if I had to kind of encapsulate what I'm thinking about the most right now, what has meant the most to me in terms of healthiness and growth and solidarity and getting to the best version of healing from religious trauma, sum it up, write it down, sum it up in 5 to 7 minutes, and then come on camera and share it. We want to hear from you. So look forward to it very much. All right. Thank you all so much again. Appreciate it. And I'll see you soon. Have a great day.